My life has been a bit chaotic over the last 4 to 5 months, to say the least. And it hasn't been like one specific thing. One of my excuses has been like, "Oh, it's been work. Work is just so I've been so busy and so focused on it." No, that's a distraction. It's been a litany of things. Some big things turned into small things turned into big things, and they all just kind of happened all at once and created distractions. And those distractions really wreaked havoc in my life and continue to do so because life is moving a million miles a minute. And I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, can probably relate to me when I say sometimes life just feels like that, right? It's going so fast that you feel like you're hanging on for dear life. I remember when I was a kid, we grew up in Texas near the Six Flags over Texas. There was all these awesome roller coasters, but I was small. And so I couldn't go on the rides. And finally, when I was tall enough to go on the rides, I was still like this little stick of a kid. And so I was excited to go with my dad. My dad's this big guy who's, muscular and everything. And we sit down and we finally get to the ride and we're in the little cart. And the bar that would go down, if you know what I'm talking about with the roller coasters like this, there'd be like a bar that would go down. But it was a two bar. So I'm sitting next to my dad, and my dad's a big guy. I'm a small little stick. And so the bar, the guy who works there is just click, 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 walking down, making sure that they click. My dad, click, and it goes to my dad's waist. But of course, I'm like 1/4 of my dad's size because I'm this little kid. And I'm realizing this bar is not going to stop me from flying out. And the roller coaster goes off, and I was literally hanging on to the bar, like, please don't fly out. Please don't fly out. And of course, we get done, and my dad's like, was it fun? And I was like, yeah, because I was a kid, didn't know better. But that's how life sometimes feels, where we're like, I don't know if I'm actually going to survive this. It's just everything's happening all at once. And I'm going to be honest, I thought about the podcast. I really did. During couple months ago, during the summer, I thought about, oh, you know what? It's been a while since I've done the podcast. I really want to get back to doing the podcast. And every time I would get into a rhythm where I thought I was going to, I would look at the chaos that was going on around me and look at the speed of life that was happening. And I would think to myself, I'd look at these distractions and I would say, do I really have the capacity to do the podcast and everything else along with life right now? But then a few weeks ago, I realized that the chaos was all still happening. Nothing has changed. Nothing has slowed down. Everything has still been chaos and crazy. But I kind of looked around and realized, hey, I kind of have a rhythm. I've kind of like learned. And I think I want to do the podcast. I miss doing the podcast. And doing the podcast fills my cup. I love spending time writing the podcast. I love spending time researching different topics and what I'm going to talk about. I love sitting down and recording these, part of the editing process and the writing process. I love talking through things. And this is as much for me as it is for anybody else who decides to listen to this podcast, because I get a lot out of being able to talk through what I'm going through and how I want to perceive life and what my worldview is. And every time I say it out loud, it actually solidifies a little bit more. No, I actually believe this about myself. So when I say, I think I can do this, or I think you can do this, I am showering over myself the same belief and same understanding. So I love doing the podcast because it fills my cup up. After emptying my cup with all the things that I'm doing all around the world or around my life, around my world, right? Work and friendships and dating and trying to work out and be in shape and figure out life, all of that stuff, you just empty your cup all the time. And so I really started asking myself this question a few weeks ago. Okay, nothing's changed. So if not now, then when? And I finally got to this point where literally yesterday, I was just like, no more time wasted. We can't wait for the next week. We can't wait for it to make sense. We can't wait for us to have more time. We just got to get back into it. And you just got to do it. And I sometimes forget that just because life is chaotic and crazy, it doesn't mean that I should stop doing the things that fill my cup, right? Will it take more time? Yes. Will it be uncomfortable at times and probably sometimes counterproductive? Yeah, it absolutely will. But will it make me feel more accomplished, like my time was well spent, especially on the weekends? And ultimately, will I sleep better at night knowing that I was able to give a little bit more than even I thought I could? And my answer is going to be yes. Almost every single time, yes. And I think about these things, and I really, when I was getting everything together for the podcast and setting up the camera and setting up the lights and getting things back in order, I was just like, nope, you know what? If not now, then when? Like, I can keep creating distractions and creating excuses, but the timing, everybody says timing is everything, but the timing is up to me. So I just have to go do it. And that's the thing is sometimes we get into these rhythms or sometimes we're moving through life so fast where we're just hanging on for dear life. And we say, I could never add more stuff to this. But once you kind of grow in strength or maturity or whatever, you get to this point where you're like, actually, you know what? Life is just moving this fast now. It doesn't actually slow down. You just kind of catch up to the speed. And then you organize your life and you figure out what you can do and then you go. I also would say that over the last 4 or 5 months, it's been like stop go, if that makes sense. So it's been chaotic and fast, and there have been moments where I've been like, I can't hold on. And then there's also been moments that I've been like, okay, it's been like 3.5 weeks of the same exact thing. Maybe it was a frustration or whatever, and it's just dragging on and life is moving slow. So I've also had these moments through the summer where I was like, it was the flip side of everything moving fast. Everything was just moving so slow. And there were moments where I literally asked, like, when will this season of life end? Please, like, just please let it be over. I feel like you probably can. Most of you, if not all of you, can relate to this as well, where you've been at the end of a chapter or what you feel like you're like, okay, I've learned all the lessons I needed to here, and it's time to go to the next chapter. And then you're just sitting there in that chapter and you're like, God, just please, like, end this chapter, end this season of life. Maybe you're going through a transition at work, right? Where you know that one boss is leaving and another boss is coming, but that boss isn't leaving. Or maybe you've been told, hey, you're up for this promotion, but you got to wait until this person leaves, and then that person never leaves. I've felt this before in my life where, you know, I was in this transition period where I was like, well, I went back to school for this, but then COVID hit, and I don't know if I want to do this, and I don't know if I want to do this, and I can't figure out what I want to do in between. So I was just like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could just fast forward a year, like the movie Click, right? I just want to fast forward to the part where I'm actually doing the thing. And there's nothing in life like that, by the way. You just have to go for it. And something I relate with, maybe you've been single for a really long time and you're starting to question or struggle with the thought of maybe this will never happen. And you're letting that cynical thought come into your head of like, nah, it never will. Like, I'm too much of a hopeful and an optimist that I don't think I'll ever get to that point. Maybe I will, and I struggle with thoughts like that for a little while, but they go really quick because I'm constantly thinking of what could be, what could happen. So I do relate with being single for a really long time, but I also am like super excited about what could happen. So if you're in that boat of, I don't really have any hope left, I hope this is for you. And I hope this podcast encourages you to not give up, hope. Because you can have certain timing. Timing matters, right? Sometimes you're in that slow period, and then other times you're in that fast period, and you wonder, hey, when will it happen? Will it happen when everything is calm, or will it happen when everything is chaos? And there are some groups of people who will say, yeah, when you least expect it, it's going to happen. And then you're in the middle of chaos, and you're like, this would be the most least expected time. And then you're slow and you're like, okay, this is the expected time. At least in my brain, that's kind of how it works. But I remember years ago, that I went, this was a long time ago. I went on this whitewater rafting trip up in Tennessee, and I went with this incredible group of friends. We were all really close. We were all friends, and there was like 2 boats, right? And we're all having fun, but we're respectable. And it's very rare that you sometimes get to see people in a different light, in a different environment than what you normally see them in. So whitewater rafting, you want to see somebody's like true self, get them out on whitewater rafting. You'll learn very much about their vocabulary and other things about them. Because we're all out there, and of course we've got these 2 boats, and the leaders, the guides that are like the whitewater rapid guides, are talking to each other, and then they get us all set up. And the first part is real calm, and they're talking to us, and they're giving us instructions, and they're testing out commands of like, when I say this, you go to the left, and when I say this, you go to the right. If I say this, you stop paddling. And we're all we're locked in. Both boats are locked in, and the guides are like, okay, this first part is like a lazy river. It's slow. And of course, we were all like gearing up, like, we're ready for the rapids. Let's go. And I remember somebody was like, okay, when's the first rapid? And he's like, it's not for like 45 minutes or 30 minutes down the river. We're like, what? Like, we're all geared up and ready to do it. But now we have to wait. And so we end up, he's like, yeah, if you guys want to jump off and float down the river with us, like, we'll wait up for you. We'll make sure that everybody's, in the boat, but now's the time. So we all are like swimming and having fun as a group. And I remember that it was just really cool because you have these conversations, and it's in a different environment where you learn so much about people and you talk. And so I remember during this slow, lazy river time, we still had this blast of a time. But then we get to this point where we get in our boats and we're ready to go, and we can hear the rapids are coming. So he's like, yeah, we're about 3 minutes out. And so we start kind of picking up speed, and we kind of hit these little ripples and rapids, and we're like, okay, this is good. And we're 2 boats. The boat in front of us is our boat, right? So I'm in the back boat, and my friends are in, that are in the front boat. They're also having a good time. They're turning around, they're waving and laughing and stuff because we just splashed around and played in the water and whatnot. And the guide in our boat says, okay, we're coming up on, it's like, I don't know, Devil's Turn or something like that, like some crazy name of a rapid. He's like, whatever we do, we want to make sure that we go head first into it, because if we go backwards, we will flip and we'll lose a bunch of you, and we won't be able to pick you up until down the river. And as he's saying that, we look forward, and the boat in front of us had been turned around, and just, people were just launched like a catapult into the air, and we just see it flip. And of course, at this point, we are locked in. Everybody's ready to go. Like, we're keeping this sucker straight. We're not getting flipped. And so we make it down that first rapid. Then we're like picking up stragglers from the boat in front of us and making sure everybody's okay. Thankfully, everybody was. And, the rapids weren't like deathly dangerous at that point in time, which was good, but they were still like crazy rapids. And I remember we had all this fun and picked everybody up. And as I go through, life, and as I think back on that, there were moments that were in the slow times, in the times where we were just chilling, where we were laughing and having a good old time. But then there were also these extra moments that were just like pockets and little tidbits here and there, when everything was chaos and everything was happening around us, and the rapids were crazy, and we're listening to the instructions, and we're trying to turn left, and then we're trying to turn right, and we're trying to keep forward, and then we're trying to lean back, and we're trying to put weight on certain sides so the rapids don't flip us. Out of all that, there was also these funny moments of, people singing songs or making jokes or cracking up or slipping and falling and like on the bottom of the boat while we're all like flopping around trying not to die, and these rapids are just like splashing us. And it was fun. It was fun. And I just love those moments. And I look back on those moments as things that I hold on to, because it didn't matter about the timing, whether it was during the fast or the slow moment. And it actually inspires me during my life even now. And there's a great quote from the TV show The Office in their finale that says, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And it's a reminder that there are as many great moments when life is moving fast and feels chaotic as there are when life is feeling slow and dragging on. But it's actually up to us to put meaning and purpose to those moments. Because if you are not paying attention, those great moments will pass you by. And I don't want great moments to pass you by. I don't want great moments to pass me by. And I'm so thankful because over the last few months, I have been filled. My life has been filled with chaos and all sorts of stuff happening, whether it's personal, work, friends, dating, all this stuff. It's just been all over the place. But two things specifically stuck out this year that this summer, and there are two moments that I'm kind of overwhelmed with joy when I think about them. Number one, this summer, everything was going crazy. So one of the things I committed to was I need something to be active and get my mind off of work and all the other stuff. So I took up golf like hardcore, and I would golf multiple times a week. And I loved it. I got my first hole-in-one. I never thought I would, but that was this moment that in the midst of chaos, in the midst of all the stop goes and all the things that I was like, I don't know what I want to do here. I don't know how I'm going to figure out this. And, all the stuff that's happening in life, I got my first hole-in-one. And it was a surreal experience, and I'll be chasing that feeling for the rest of my life. I'll continue to play golf and continue to, every par 3 that I step up to, I'll continue to visualize that hole-in-one. But the second thing was actually completely unforeseen to me in the midst of chaos, absolute chaos. We're talking like, oh my gosh, chaos. I got set up on this like blind date with this person who I never met, never knew anything about. And I had one of the coolest dates of my life. And it was one of the most incredible moments. And it didn't work out, like just stuff happened. But I will never forget that weekend and that date. And I think that was like this little pocket of hope and pocket of excitement and joy that I could have easily been like, I don't think I have the capacity to do that while chaos is happening. And I just happened to be in a moment where I said yes. Even though all the stuff was going on outside of, life and all the craziness was happening and my mind was elsewhere half the time, I still had this moment where I was like, you know what? Yeah, this sounds like fun. And I ended up going on this date that honestly was incredible. And it gave me hope that there are people out there. There's a girl out there who is right up my alley of what I want. Because if she was there, then there's definitely others, and they exist. But it was so much fun because I've never felt more myself on a date. And walking away, I was so encouraged. And I was like, dang, like even though it didn't work out, like there was chaos involved. I am very happy of how I handled it. And that's probably when I started thinking about, oh, you know what? Like all this chaos is happening. And because I made a choice, I was able to just experience it. And maybe I need to get back to doing the podcast. That was probably one of the first times where I was like, yeah, it's probably time that I stop making excuses and stop focusing on distractions and just do the podcast. And it always comes to a point in time where you just have to do it. You just have to go and start and try. It doesn't matter if you're in the slow period of life or in the fast period of life. You just kind of have to catch up and recognize what moment you're in and then put purpose in those moments. And a lot of you know, and if you don't, I'll let you know, I draw a lot of my inspiration and encouragement from the Bible. And recently I read through the book of Acts, which is absolutely fascinating, and encourage you all to do it. But I came across this obscure verse, and it's not one you're going to see on an athlete's eye black, and you won't see it on a bumper sticker, and you probably won't hear many pastors, if any pastors, preach on it. because it's just very obscure. But before I tell you the verse, I have to kind of give you a quick backstory so that you understand the context of this verse. Because through the book of Acts, most of the book of Acts follows along this guy named Paul, who's an apostle, who meets Jesus. But before he meets Jesus, he was a Pharisee, which was the leader of the Jewish highest religious sect, the Sanhedrin. And he was like this top guy, friends with all the other top guys who really didn't like Christians. But he meets Jesus, and Jesus changes his life. And so he becomes a missionary for Jesus, and he goes all throughout the known world preaching Jesus Christ and the love and the hope that he has. And he preaches the gospel and brings the gospel all over. And the Pharisees, his old buddies, hate him so much that they want to kill him. So they imprison him. And in order to stay alive, essentially, Paul's like, look, I'm a Roman citizen. And by law, if I appeal to Caesar, you have to take me to Caesar. So he appeals to Caesar. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go to Rome. And despite the fact that other Christians are like, please don't do this. Like, you don't necessarily have to do this. If you go to Rome, you're going to die. Like, don't do this. Paul had decided, like, this was his purpose. He was going to go to Rome, he was going to preach to Caesar, and then he was going to die for Christ. Like, that, he made it up in his mind. And it's interesting because the book of Acts actually, like, kind of lays it out clearly. But this wasn't like he hopped on a plane, it was 3 hours, and then he went and died for Christ. No, it wasn't like he hopped on a boat, and 3 weeks later, he died for Christ. No, this was a long, drawn-out process that took years. From the time he was imprisoned to the time he traveled all the way to Rome. And out of all the process, it was a long process that included he was stoned and left for dead at one point. He was also shipwrecked and stranded on an island, essentially. He was bit by a venomous snake. Like, he had so much street cred. Paul had so much street cred that he was basically the first gangster. Like, he had to have been. I'm just saying. But it was crazy because all of this adventure and time and things that took place to get him there. You would think, wow, this is drawn out. And even when I'm reading through these chapters, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, his story, like, you would think it would go from this chapter and then this happened and then he died. But no, instead it goes from this chapter to this chapter to this story to this point to this point to this point. And I feel like a lot of us experience life like that. Like, a lot of us will actually go through moments where we're so convinced that we are ready to step into our future. We're ready to step into our purpose. But then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens. And it's like, when will we get there, though? But now that you understand the backstory, I'll get back to this verse, right? Because you understand the backstory a little bit. Paul is now finally, he's made it to Rome. And I can only imagine that he's psyching himself up to preach the gospel to Caesar and then die for his faith. And I would imagine that if you're in this position, and maybe you've been in this position where you've, like, psyched yourself up to do something very difficult and you're just relieved that it's finally done. I remember asking a girl out like 2 years ago. I've asked girls out since then, but this one sticks out in my mind where, like, I saw her at the gym for like 3 months in a row, and I finally psyched myself up to ask her out and went up and was like, hey, I see you here all the time. I waited in between sets. I did all the research and stuff that you're supposed to do and how to approach a girl at a gym. And I was like, hey, I've seen you here a couple times. My name's Kyle. And she said, hey, my name's this. And I was like, awesome. I just wanted to ask if I could get your number, if we could talk outside of the gym and get to know each other. And she immediately said, I have a boyfriend. And I said, no worries. Have a wonderful day. I had so much relief that I finally had like done it. I psyched myself up so much, and I finally just simply asked, and I was polite and everything, and I got it over with, right? And I knew. And after that, it was like, okay, cool. Every time I saw her, I just waved and was friendly. I didn't bother her or anything like that, like a creep. Like a normal guy, right? Like a good guy. Like, I tried to be that. But I was just so relieved that I finally had gotten it done. So I can imagine Paul is like gearing up, like ready to go. And it's like, okay, like, this is going to happen. except for one problem. And this is the verse that I came across. Acts 28:30 says, "For 2 whole years, Paul stayed there in his own rented house and welcomed all who came to see him. He proclaimed the kingdom of God and taught about the Lord Jesus Christ with all boldness and without hindrance." So you think of Paul's, like, all of his ministry and all of his mission work and everything that he did, he was always hindered by the Pharisees. And everywhere he went, the Jewish people wanted to kill him. And it was this constant hindrance of, we're going to, catch you here and you're going to die. And all this stuff that he had to go around and go through and do, and shipwrecks and stonings and being bitten by a snake. And after all the trials and tribulations and travel, Paul was finally where he believed that he was supposed to be to fulfill his purpose of dying for Christ. But instead, God had other plans. And I relate to this. And this verse really impacted me because I'm in seasons of life where I feel like, man, will I ever actually get to the point where I see my purpose fulfilled? Will I ever get to a point in my life where it gets better? Will I ever get to a point in my life where everything just makes sense, or at least most of it makes sense? Will I ever get to a point in my life where I can take a deep breath and say, I'm glad I got it done? And I don't think the answer is what I thought it would be. Because you can be in the right place at the wrong time and miss something. And you can be in the wrong place at the right time and catch something. And the timing really plays a huge part in it. And I look back on my life, and now it's 2025. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. Not where I thought I was going to be, but I can't imagine my life anywhere else. And out of all the decisions that I've made and all the places I've been in Louisiana and Virginia and Tennessee and Georgia, and I've lived in all these places, and I could have lived anywhere. But instead, in 2025, I live in Baltimore, working a job that I absolutely love, crazy chaos life, all sorts of stuff going on still, recording a podcast, and trying to find meaning through it all, and wondering, will I ever have that moment where I just feel like it's done? And maybe you relate to that as well. Maybe you can feel like, oh, yeah, I ask myself that question a lot. When will it get easier? Or when will I finally get to a point or meet my person or get to the job that I love? When will all this make sense? And I think timing does play a pretty big factor on it. And especially over the last few months, but I've looked back over the years, and I've had to do some deep reflecting. And in preparation for this podcast, I really looked back, and I kind of looked through, like, how did I get here? Like, what timing mattered to get me here? What timing impacted all of this stuff? What timing impacted the fact that I met this incredible girl and went on this incredible date? And I know it didn't work out, but like, it still was incredible. It was still awesome. Like, all the timing, the little things that it didn't make sense, but it did make sense. It somehow made sense, even though it didn't. And in my years, I've learned that God's timing is less like a worship song where it's predictable and repetitive, and it's a lot more like jazz. And sometimes it sounds faster and it's chaotic, and it's all over the place, and then other times it's slow and smooth. But the thing about jazz is that whether it's fast or whether it's slow, it invokes a certain feeling inside of us because each note is unique to the person who's playing it. And it's the same thing with God's timing. Just because the timing feels off, and just because it doesn't feel like you're in the right place or the right time right now, just like a jazz conductor, God will bring it all together. You just have to keep playing in order to hear it. I really appreciate all of you. It's so good to be back. I am so excited. I have so many conversations lined up, and I'm really, really excited. But for now, that's going to do it for this conversation. I hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of your week. Remember to give grace, show love, and as always, stay stellar. Peace.